Welcome back to the FF Face-Off. I'm your host, Anthony Cervino. Follow me on Twitter at The Real NFL Guru. Follow the show at the FF Face-Off and at fffaceoff.com. We can be found at all the top social media and podcast platforms today. 1.0, Dynasty Fantasy Football, Rookie Mock Draft, Post-NFL Draft. Let's get right into it. And I'm going to share the draft board. I'm using the Sleeper app draft board on the screen. I'm going to do this mock solo. I'm going to base it off my rankings, and I'm going to tell you why I am drafting the players where I am. Let's get right into it. And this is not a question. The unquestioned 101 in all fantasy football formats, whether we're looking at Superflex or one quarterback, it is, at least to me, Bijan Robinson. And we know Bijan Robinson's going to be a superstar. The landing spot's absolutely positively phenomenal because he lands with the Atlanta Falcons. And what do we know about the Atlanta Falcons and Arthur Smith? Arthur Smith was that guy who unlocked Derrick Henry back when Arthur Smith and Derrick Henry were together with the Tennessee Titans. And now we get Bijan Robinson in a landing spot where, let's face it, we all love Tyler Algier, who was a fifth-round pick last year. Tyler Algier had over 1,000 yards rushing. We know that Cordarrelle Patterson had another career rejuvenation with the Atlanta Falcons last year. Just imagine what a generational talent, perhaps the best running back talent since Saquon Barkley can do in this offense. We even know, per rumors, that Bijan Robinson could even line up in the slot. He is a weapon that's going to hit you from everywhere. And he's my 101. Again, if this was Superflex, I would be doing the same thing. Atlanta ran 48.8% of the time, even when losing last year, which was 5 points more than any other team in the NFL. They have weapons galore. The big question mark, of course, is the quarterback in Desmond Ridder, which tells me they're going to run the damn football even more with that question mark under center. Furthermore, we know that Cordarrelle Patterson is in a walk year. So this backfield moving forward post 2023 is going to be manned by Bijan and Tyler Algier. Pretty good offensive line. Now, Atlanta, they brought in some help. They also have some excellent interior offensive linemen. We look at Hennessy and Lindstrom. I'm all in on Bijan Robinson. Let's go to my second pick, and this is another running back, folks. I love Jahmyr Gibbs and the landing spot with the Detroit Lions. This is phenomenal because we know Detroit has one of the best offensive lines and one of the best overall offenses in the NFL. We also know that this offensive line helped Jamal Williams to one of the most prolifical touchdown seasons for a running back in a very long time. That was Jamal Williams. This is Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, I get it. He's going to share a backfield with David Montgomery, but guess what? You know who he doesn't have to share a backfield with anymore? My guy, DeAndre Swift. And DeAndre Swift was super effective when he was healthy and when the Lions wanted to use him, but I don't think they trusted his durability, which is why they drafted Gibbs and shipped DeAndre Swift to Philadelphia. And oh, by the way, I think DeAndre Swift's going to thrive in Philly. But we already know that Jahmyr Gibbs, he's going to have a big-time role. When you take a running back, never mind an offensive player, but a running back this high in an NFL draft, you know he's going to have a role. And I know that David Montgomery is going to be the early down guy, but we know that Gibbs can line up everywhere, and he's a weapon as a receiver out of the backfield with his elite speed. Where I worry about Gibbs a little bit is in short yardage situations. So the touchdown upside, it does worry me, kind of like the Williams Swift situation. I think touchdowns could on the side of David Montgomery, but when it comes to receptions and targets and all those explosive, fun plays that bring big pop fantasy weeks, that is Jahmyr Gibbs territory. Williams and Swift last season, they were top 20 fantasy football running backs in 5 separate weeks. They also had a couple of games together where they finish in the top 5. This Detroit offense pops for the running back position. You have some young, fresh rookie legs with Gibbs. If Bijan Robinson wasn't in this draft class, Gibbs would be the unquestioned 101. But because Bijan Robinson is here, he's the one, and Gibbs is the number 2, especially for his landing spot. When it comes to landing spot, by the way, for running backs, it couldn't have been more perfect for the top 2 guys on draft boards, Bijan Robinson and Gibbs. Let's go to my number 3. And this is hard because it's going to be a wide receiver. The most talented wide receiver in this draft class didn't land in a great spot. So I'm actually going to pose a situation. If you're a win-now team, you're going to draft Jordan Addison. If you're a rebuilding team, you're going to draft Jaxon Smith-Njigba. So I'm going to go with Jordan Addison at number 3. And the reason being, we know Minnesota's defense is terrible. They didn't do a lot to improve it, and I like the DC they brought in. I like Flores. He's going to improve it, but player personnel-wise, still a work in progress. So this is a team that's going to have to throw the football to stay in games and win games. There's going to be a lot of shootouts. There's going to be a lot of negative game script, and we know that Kirk Cousins can get the job done. We also know that Justin Jefferson's the alpha. He's going to command the lion's share of the double coverage, which means this stud rookie, Jordan Addison, he's going to be running downfield all over the place. No more Adam Thielen, which is really good for Jordan Addison. And as much as I like KJ Osborne, Jordan Addison is unquestioned the better talent of the 2. This landing spot for Jordan Addison, this is why landing spot means everything. Like, I get it's fun to project and play devil's advocate before the draft, but things really start heating up now that the draft is here, because a few weeks ago, it was JSN at wide receiver and everybody else. But now in Dynasty, your build and your situation plays a role on who the hell you draft, especially if you're trying to go get that win now. So Jordan Addison in this offense, under Kevin O'Connell, they had a 66.4% pass rate. I believe Jordan Addison plays a big role. Again, he's not going to see the top coverage. He's going to see late coverage compared to Justin Jefferson. I'm all in long-term for this guy, and I'm fine taking him over JSN. Now, when it comes to JSN, we're going to take JSN with the 4th pick in this draft. And let me tell you why. We know that he's the most talented wide receiver in this draft class, despite the fact he dropped to number 20 overall. We also know that, look at the situation in Seattle. Immediately, it may not look great for JSN because, well, Tyler Lockett played really well last year, and so did DK Metcalf. If Geno Smith does not take a step back, I expect this offense to continue taking a step in the right direction. DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett, if either one of these guys misses any time with injury, you insert JSN in starting 2 wide sets. If there's no injuries, we know JSN is going to be starter in 3 wide sets, with him most likely lining up in the slot primarily, while Tyler Lockett plays on the outside with DK Metcalf. This is going to be a run-heavy team. We know, look at the running backs that they have with Walker and they drafted Charbonnet, they're going to run the hell out of the football, but that doesn't mean that all three of these wide receivers can't play particularly well in fantasy. Now, all three aren't going to have big pop fantasy production. They just don't throw enough in Seattle for it. But what if an injury happens? What if Tyler Lockett, getting a little bit up there in age, what if he takes a step back and JSN looks like the better guy? He's going to start seeing more opportunity. He's going to be seeing more targets. Now, long term, which is why if you took him at 3, I don't care. Long term, JSN could be the starter in 2 wide sets as soon as next season, because this team could be like, all right, Tyler Lockett, we're going to move on from you because we're paying you a lot and we have this young stud on a rookie deal for the next few years. We need to open up cap space. He'll be 31 years old by mid-season. So there's a lot of things that can happen with this wide receiver group. So JSN is my 104 in one quarterback rookie drafts. Let's go to my 5th pick. And things begin to get murky. Do we go wide receiver or do we go running back? Do we think about Dalton Kincaid? What I am going to do here, I'm going to roll the dice on Quinten Johnson. And he's in a very similar situation as JSN. He enters a team, good offense. Now, obviously, the offense is better with the Chargers. The quarterback is better with the Chargers, but we also know the Chargers have 2 really, really, really good wide receivers ahead of Quinten Johnson in the form of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Keenan Allen's getting a little bit older. Injuries finally began to catch back up with him last season. We also know that Mike Williams, he's very inconsistent. He's also very inconsistent when it comes to injuries. The guy behind him, who I loved, Joshua Palmer, he looked good in a few games last year, and he looked really bad when he was a starter playing significant snaps when either one of Allen or Williams were banged up. So we know they drafted Johnson to be the 3 in this offense. If he gels quickly, he's going to take over the number 3 spot from Palmer almost immediately. And I do expect, especially if Mike Williams suffers any injuries and misses time, it's going to be Quinten Johnson over Josh Palmer. Long term, I don't see Keenan Allen on this team past this season. He's getting older. He was in the midst of trade rumors this season. We know Eckler's getting older. He wanted out. We could see a big change with the Chargers next offseason, especially if they don't make a deep playoff run. We could see this offense look different. They could decide to move off of Eckler and Keenan Allen, 2 longtime mainstays in this offense. They could choose to move off of both of them, which is especially good news for Quinten Johnson. Let's go number 6. And depending on what your team needs, we go running back or we go Dalton Kincaid here. I'm going to go Dalton Kincaid. And the reason why I'm going to go Dalton Kincaid is he gets the Kelsey comps. I know he's not Kelsey, but he's already drawing the comps. A few years ago with Kyle Pitts had a lot of hype, generational hype. The landing spot wasn't great. But as bad as it was for Kyle Pitts in the touchdown department in his rookie year, he still managed over 1,000 yards receiving. Things haven't been great since then. But I know the narrative. Tight ends don't always translate in year 1. Kyle Pitts was a little bit of an outlier with those yards and receptions, and I believe Dalton Kincaid could be the same thing. He goes to a Buffalo team that told us a lot this offseason. They want Josh Allen to throw more. They don't want him to run as much, which means he needs to get the ball out of his hands quickly, and that could mean short and intermediate routes to Dalton Kincaid. Excellent receiver, can line up all over the formation. And we know the Bills have Stephon Diggs. They had big needs at wide receiver since my guy Gabe Davis didn't pop like I thought he would. They moved on from McKenzie. They have Shakir. They brought in Trenton Sherfield. You can make the case that if Dalton Kincaid turns it on and turns it on quick, you can make the case that Dalton Kincaid's a number 2 possession receiver in this offense, while Gabriel Davis is the big play deep threat. I see that as a big-time possibility. Kincaid had a 63.7 PFF receiving grade in each of the past 2 seasons, which was the second lowest among tight ends with 750 routes in that time. I'm sorry, that was not Kincaid. That was Dawson Knox's numbers. So I could certainly see Dalton Kincaid leapfrogging Knox early and often and really taking over the reins to this starting tight end spot. Knox is a good player. He made a little bit of noise in fantasy, more so a red zone threat, but Kincaid can do it all. Let's go to my number 8. Actually, my number 7. And my number 7, I'm going to go with Zay Flowers. You're probably asking yourself, where's your next running back? I'm prioritizing wide receivers here because of the potential opportunity they have ahead. And Zay Flowers is in a really good situation with the Baltimore Ravens. They have OBJ. He's on a 1-year deal. Bateman, I know he's been banged up, hasn't really looked the part. Devin Duvernay's Devin Duvernay, and Nelson freaking Aguilar is Nelson freaking Aguilar. Out the gate, there's a world where Zay Flowers is a starting wide receiver for the NFL Baltimore Ravens from week 1. And starter in 2 to 3 wide sets. He's an explosive playmaker. He could be the big play guy. This is a wide receiver who could be the next Marquise Brown in this offense. And the last time Marquise Brown was with Lamar Jackson, he finished as the fantasy football PPR wide receiver 22 back in 2021 with 91 receptions and just over 1,000 yards receiving and 6 touchdowns. And oh, by the way, I just mentioned Lamar Jackson. Big part of the Ravens draft per se, because Lamar Jackson signed his long-term deal. He's going to be a Baltimore Raven for the long run, which means Zay Flowers is going to be, if everything works out perfectly, he's going to be Lamar Jackson's number 1 wide receiver threat long-term. OBJ is not going to be there forever. Aguilar's just a big play guy, if that. Duvernay and Bateman, I'm not big on either one of them. So if you put the pieces of the puzzle together, Zay Flowers, the guy you want, and it may not happen right away. But if you have a rebuild team, if you're trying to think with a long-term cap on your head, then you want to take Zay Flowers in this spot over all of the other running backs because, again, Lamar Jackson and not a lot of threat at wide receiver past 2023. Let's go to my number 8 player. My number 8 pick is Zach Charbonnet. And finally, Charbonnet goes, listen, he was one of my favorite running backs in this draft, but unfortunately, landing spot was not great for Zach Charbonnet. I like this Seattle offense. I like the team. I actually believe the Seattle Seahawks can win the NFC West. When it comes to this backfield, historically, they want to run the football. They've done it for years, and they have really good weapons at receiver, pretty good quarterback, but they're still going to run the hell out of it. However, I do believe this is Walker's backfield, at least early on. Could Walker get banged up and open the door for a super talented Zach Charbonnet to thrive? Absolutely. But when it comes to immediate fantasy value in this offense, I just don't see it for Zach Charbonnet. Sheer talent-wise, he's an absolute slam dunk taking him with the 8th pick in a rookie draft. I just don't see his path to big-time production. It's just Walker, Charbonnet. They still have DJ Dallas. Pete Carroll doesn't give a damn about our fantasy team, so it's really, really hard. We're kind of taking Zach Charbonnet either with the mindset of Walker gets hurt or he might be a better player overall than Walker, and he eventually takes over as the RB1. I like Charbonnet a lot. I think you have to take a shot on him. I see some mocks. I see some ranks where he's going number 6. I take him at number 8 and prioritize guys like Quinten Johnson and Zay Flowers over him because there's a better path to opportunity and production in a shorter amount of time. Let's go to my number 9 and the 9th pick in this draft. I'm going to go Kendre Miller. And can you make a case where Kendre Miller goes over Charbonnet? You can, because look at the situation Kendre Miller is in. The New Orleans Saints. Mark Ingram, he's a free agent. He's old. They're probably not bringing him back. And if they do, what are they going to do with him? David Johnson is another running back they had on this roster last year. He's old, barely played. They're not bringing him back. And if they do, what are they going to do with him? Alvin Kamara. We don't know what the fallout from his off-the-field issues is. Probably facing a suspension. Who knows if he plays at all this year and if he does play when? Which means Kendre Miller, he could slide right into the RB1 spot depending on what happens to Alvin Kamara. Miller has bell cow back potential. He could play on every down. He's only 20 years old. He's young. And again, with Kamara, he's also 28 years old going into this year. So there's not a lot left here. Short term, there's value for Kendre Miller. Long term, there's value for Kendre Miller. So if you say, Anthony, I know he's not as good as Charbonnet, but can we take him ahead of him? You absolutely can. I just like Charbonnet more personally, but opportunity-wise, if I had more of a win-now team, this is, again, way win-now versus long-term. If you have a win-now team, you probably want to take Kendre Miller over Charbonnet. If you're thinking with a long-term mindset, then you go Charbonnet. But here's where we go. Kendre Miller. I forgot to mention Jamal Williams. He just doesn't do it for me, folks. Jamal Williams, he was an enigma last year. He scored all those rushing touchdowns behind an elite offensive line, and he wasn't very efficient. Scoring those touchdowns, he wasn't very efficient, going for over 1,000 yards rushing. He's just not a very efficient running back, and he takes a step back when it comes to offensive line. He takes a step back when it comes to overall offense. I just don't like Jamal Williams in this offense. I firmly believe Kendre Miller will be the guy in this backfield if Kamara is out long term. It's not going to be Jamal Williams, which means Kendre Miller in your redraft leagues probably going to be the cheapest running back in this backfield, and he's the one you want to target because I believe he's certainly more talented than Jamal Williams. He's younger than Jamal Williams. He's younger than Kamara. We don't know what Kamara is going to be long-term. Kendre Miller could be a big-time value in redraft and in Dynasty. And hell, even in best ball, Kendre Miller, short-term, big-time upside. As we start closing this out, the number 10 pick, we can go a few different spots here. This is where you pull the trigger on Anthony Richardson. I like Anthony Richardson. I know I put out a tweet that got people a little bit upset. I said, I love Anthony Richardson. I don't love the landing spot. He has 0 to work with. I don't like Pittman as much as the consensus. And I'm not calling Jonathan Taylor a 0. But outside of Taylor and Pittman, what else does he have? He has an overrated tight end room that hasn't done a damn thing in the NFL. Behind Jonathan Taylor, there isn't much. And behind Michael Pittman, there isn't much at wide receiver. Like Alec Pierce, people talk about him like he's something special. He's really not. I know they drafted the rookie, but we haven't seen him play football yet. So the reason why I prioritize Anthony Richardson over those other quarterbacks is because Anthony Richardson, if he acclimates to the pro level with his size and skill set, he has the highest fantasy ceiling of all the other quarterbacks drafted. He could be something special because of what he brings with his legs, and he's not undersized. He's a big dude. He can take hits. He can take punishment. He's comp to Lamar Jackson and Cam Newton. I love what he brings to the table here. The short and intermediate accuracy when it comes to throwing the football needs a lot of work. He's very raw, but we also know he can throw the deep ball. So personally, I would have loved if Richardson went to Washington and that group of skill position weapons, but that is not what happened. So the reason why I draft Anthony Richardson here is because of potential ceiling if everything works. This is a high risk, high reward pick. Would it be a higher risk if you take him earlier? Absolutely. But it's still a late first round rookie pick. I think it's pretty risky in a one quarterback league to take a quarterback with big time bust potential. But that is just how high I think the ceiling is. As high as his bust potential is, his ceiling is twice as higher if everything works out. And I also like the fact that he gets the old Philly OC who really made Jalen Hurts gel, Steichen. I love that he's the head coach and he's going to be Anthony Richardson coach. And I like that Richardson's going to be in that system. I think that's going to work wonders, especially for his early transition into the NFL. Let's round this out with pick number 11. And I'm going to go with Devon Achane to the Miami Dolphins. He is an explosive running back. And the argument is, well, Miami doesn't throw the football to their running backs. Pump the brakes. You make the case a few years ago, Frisco didn't throw the football to their running backs. And then they started using Debo as a hybrid. Then they started throwing to the running backs because it was Debo. And then you trade for Christian McCaffrey. All of a sudden, they're throwing to their running backs. Perhaps the Dolphins last season, they didn't throw a ton of their running backs because they didn't have running backs who had an excellent skill set when it comes to catching the football. Wilson and Mostert are very good running backs, not the greatest receivers out of the backfield, which is what Achane does best. Elite speed, explosive. I think he's a guy you can line him up all over the formation, and you'll get something out of him. Now, he's not an early down back. I don't think he's ever going to give you anything close to bell cow opportunity share, but what he's worth taking here is the fact of the ceiling, because he's going to give you a lot of targets, a lot of receptions, and a lot of fantasy points as a receiver out of the backfield. He's also going to give you a lot of explosive plays with his elite speed and his elusiveness in space. I love the fact that McDaniel, he's a type of coach that's going to scheme Achane open and exploit his skill sets, which is why I have Achane as my 11th overall pick in a rookie draft. Let's close this baby out. With my number 12 pick, we can go a few different places here. If you want to roll the dice, let's go Rashee Rice. And the reason why I go Rashee Rice is nothing more than landing spot. Rashee Rice is in a Chiefs system with Reed, with Mahomes. Look at the wide receivers. They lost Hardman. They lost Juju. They didn't bring anything in free agency. So starting wide receivers right now, we're looking at MVS. We're looking at Kadarius Toney, who has an injury history. We're looking at Sky Moore, who didn't do a damn thing last year until the Super Bowl. Even MVS has a little bit of an injury history, drops the football sometimes. There is absolutely, positively a path, a clear path for Rashee Rice to be the week one starter. Does he have to have a perfect camp? Does he have to impress Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid? Absolutely. Can he do it? I absolutely think he can. I'm taking a shot at Rashee Rice at 12 overalls. It's a little bit controversial. You can go Mayer here because of the situation he is in with the Raiders. You can go a few different directions. You can go Mingo. But This is 12 overall. We're not taking him second overall. At 12 overall, might as well be a second round pick. And this is where I'm going to take darts. I'm going to take shots at high upside, high ceiling players like a Richardson at 10, Achane at 11, or Rice at 12, because I want these guys to hit. And if they hit, they're going to pay dividends for your dynasty team for years to come. Give me the wide receiver attached to Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and perennially a top 3 offense in the NFL. All right, guys, this was phenomenal. This was a terrific one quarterback mock draft. We're going to be shooting mock draft videos early and often here at the FF Face-Off. Emerson Beery did a super flex mock draft with 2 other guys last night. Check that out in the archive. So I decided to follow that up with a 1 quarterback mock draft. Maybe the next one I do super flex. He does 1 quarterback. Maybe we go 2 rounds. We're going to mix things up here. It's rookie draft season. It's dynasty startup season. And we're beelining to the start of the actual fantasy football draft season. August is going to be here before you know it. Make sure you tune into the FF Face-Off for all of your NFL and fantasy football needs. We'll see you later.